this is a point of time where you can actually ask questions of our candidates. You can ask your question to an individual candidate, or you can ask it to the group. I saw your hand first, Joni, and then Mayor Nelson. Okay.
I actually think that as a community and as a neighborhood, Ballantrae shouldn't face those issues alone.
Sure.
It should be an entire village solution, and I'm not sure exactly who you all have had come in to offer solutions to solve some of the issues going on, but I see a few areas that maybe a gate and some other things may be helpful depending on where the outliers are. I think it is a requirement that you have the village support, because it is not a neighborhood problem. It is something that we should approach holistically. And when we look at the village overall and the various neighborhoods, we have to take it neighborhood by neighborhood, because each community has different influences that are providing weaknesses and compromising those neighborhoods. So it is definitely something that the village should be sitting at the table with the residents here to come up with solutions. And in terms of the cost option as well, it should be a shared responsibility.
Mayor Nelson?
Thank you so much. So while there isn't really a precedent for having a gate in any other neighborhood in the village of Flossmoor, there is a precedent for some residents having gates. And I think that's important, because I think that helps you build a case for the need to go ahead and approve that. There's a zoning board of appeals that would review that, and I would definitely love to see the case and how it's set up, and the safety and security, not just for the folks coming into your property, but also for the traffic patterns as well. I'd be interested in seeing those plans also. And the other thing I'm going to say is I work very closely with our local representatives. You are in the 5th District of Cook County. There's a new commissioner, Commissioner McCaskill, who is in charge of your area. I have a great relationship with our local officials and would be happy to advocate, which is, I think, the primary job of a mayor, is to advocate for you and what you need. And I think the voice of the HOA saying what they need and backing this project is very important for me then to go ahead and support and advocate for.
Appreciate it.
I live in Old Flossmoor, so whenever I'm going into Ballantrae to visit friends, I take, Flossmoor Road, and I go up, I think it's 192nd.
Yeah,
so it's a very off the route road. I can totally see how, if the problem is coming in on Crawford, like close that exit, because that would just mean, but I think people who are coming to Ballantrae and know where they're going, they'll find it. They'll find it. Now I go to Mayoral all the time. I've never tried to access Ballantrae from Mayoral. You can get into Ballantrae from Mayoral.
You turn right on Crawford. So our issue.
So it's really Crawford is the only real entrance into.
So we've had several different scenarios, whereas carjackings out of Meyer, people coming in and they finally turn just to quit the first right.
Okay.
So at night, okay, if I'm trying to hide, right? So I turn the car off, I park in people's driveway, turn the car off,
Gotcha.
get in the trunk, get in the back seat, or just leave it and walk away.
Okay. So it's really Crawford.
They'll run in your backyard.
Crawford is the issue.
Yes.
Like if we can shut down Crawford, and it's like
I agree.
I just think it's good to shut down Crawford, because I never go through that way anyway. So, I'm a huge proponent of, a lot of times when we're talking about the great things that we do in this community, in the 60s and 70s, it was redlining, and they were trying to keep black people out of communities. And I don't want to be that community we so bougie, we don't want other people in our community, because we know better than the redlining that we had to endure. So, but this seems like a solution to just shut down Crawford initially. So easy for me to say, because I'm not the trustee yet.
We got Driscoll?
Yes. First, I have to take a look at the HOA, right? Because it's probably not in there now. You guys have to amend it, correct?
Yeah.
So as the first step, coming together, passing it, amending it. Once you're there, then you bring it through, the various committees and then the board. I think, from my perspective, if the Ballantrae community wants it, get through all the steps, I'm going to vote for the will of what you guys want. If you want a gate there, I would go with that. But it has to be overwhelming, and we do have a few legal hurdles we'd have to get through.
Okay. So just so we know the order, Kevin, we had yours, but then it would be
Carolyn.
yes, you're next, and then you're next.
Yeah, Brian touched on an issue that was going to be my comment. What does your current HOA say? Right? That would be the first step. There was a second piece that I want, when you get to this point, that we consider. I once lived in the Giddy, and this was some years ago when I was single and wealthy. I wasn't giving all my money to my children. We had issues with keeping the services that we needed from accessing our community. There was a couple of fires, and the fire department had access issues with getting into it. So when you get to that point, just make sure that you're looking at not only keeping the unwanted from accessing your community, but making sure we have them. Certainly our great police chief will help with this, and then our fire chief as well. But making sure that the services that will be needed for your community has appropriate access to your community when it's desired. But in short, if your HOA says it, we can support it. I'll be behind it.
So, with my experience as a community organizer, the first people you have to start with are the people that it affects. And it's important for you all to come together as the Ballantrae community and then bring it to the Flossmoor community, because we don't know what the solution is for you. You know what the solution is because you see it every night. I mean, I just happened to be coming out of Myers one day, me and my husband, and we saw people running towards us with carts. They were stealing groceries, so I can only imagine that the next place they were going to turn was make that right and go down Crawford and hide, because we saw them coming out of Myers. And so that is a big issue. Like I said, if you all get together as an HOA association, but also as a community, to find out what the best solutions are, and also what those what kind of problems those solutions can bring, because that's also another thing. Sometimes when you want to put up a gate, are you going to keep out the community members? Because I drive in Ballantrae all the time. I love coming over there. I have friends over there. So, it's things like that you have to think about, and how would it affect the other parts of the community. But the best way is for you all to get together, come up with those solutions, bring them to us so that we know what we're voting on. And I think you'll get the support of the village, because like I said, you have those issues in that part of the neighborhood, and those are things that we need to be educated on, so when we do vote, we know what you've already talked about, and we know what solutions you've come up with, and also what may be the cons to some of those solutions, like Dr. Dorsey mentioned. So I think you'll have Flossmoor's full support as long as everybody's educated and aware that there is a problem, because the awareness piece may not even be out there for some that don't go up to Myers and hear about some of the things through the news channels.
I think it's Belgee, and then it was you.
Well, first of all, we're all here to represent you, the community. And if that's what you feel you need to do to self-police your community, I'm all for it. Certainly a big advocate of security, securing your home, securing the businesses. And nobody knows what you need more than you do, especially as a community. You guys meet here, you meet at each other's homes, you have conversations, you know what you need. So who would I be to go against that? Of course, after you reach all, cover your bases and go before the trustees and the mayor, and that, I'm all for you policing yourselves.
Yeah, so Ballantrae is the most affected by the Mire. It just is. I live in Flossmoor Park. The only time Mire affects me is when I go over to get steaks, because they have them on sale from time to time. So I know that because doing some ride-alongs with the officers, they told me what happens. They have an officer respond from the north, they get chased out from the east, and they're going down. The first turn is right there. When they see the lights coming at them down Crawford, they're just bailing. So to me, that you guys are the most affected by it. It makes sense that we make some special concessions and do everything we can. I mean, we all want to live in a place where we feel safe. If I'm walking through the neighborhood at night, which I often do walking my dog, I don't have to think about the things you have to think about, what's going to happen coming out, because Myers 24 hours. So absolutely, I would be all in favor. I think one of the things that we have to do is solve for the problems that it would cause, but we've got some great directors, both in police, fire, and public works. I'm sure that we can come up with solutions so that you guys still get your plowing done, that there's access for emergency vehicles. I'm sure we can get that done. We just have to sit at the table and figure that out. But 100%, I absolutely think that's more than reasonable.
I just see Troy's hand, and then we're going to go to another question.
Great. Patrick, thank you for the question. Definitely, if we come together as an HOA, for sure, that's going to be supported. But what I think we also need to look at as a community is not only just that access, but the whole Crawford Road. That whole Crawford Road, these homes are backed up to it. So it's not just the gated access, they're going into people's backyards back there. And so not only do I think that there should be some sort of security in these access points. I live next to Central Park access point, but there's got to be some sort of wall. I think we were going to propose, but I know us as an HOA are coming together and we've got some really good ideas, and we're looking at all of the legal aspects. We're looking at the cost of things. And you know what Les said at the one meeting in January? He goes, if there's a will of this town, then there's a path forward. And that's how I believe. So for sure, I think that definitely the security over there, it just needs to be addressed. But everyone keeps on talking about Meyer, but there are going to be more businesses over there. We're about to build along those. So it's not only going to just be Meyer we're going to be worried about, there's going to be even more traffic. And with that brings a little bit more. So I think us as an association, definitely we're going to be coming together and looking at that. But for sure, you would have my vote if the HOA does do that.
With limited budgetary resources, how will you prioritize infrastructure projects, and what criteria will you use to decide which projects receive funding?
One of the things that I had mentioned is, I think that the village needs to have an interactive budget, but before you can even plan anything with budget, a strategic plan needs to happen. And that involves the community members. So the community is how we prioritize. We would first need to do a strategic plan again, see what the community members seek to be important, and then look at the budget and see what we have and prioritize it based on the vote of the community members. It's just like you do a community health analysis. We do that in public health. We have to talk to hospitals, we have to talk to police departments, everybody that the county represents. And the county then tells us what the problem and issues are. That becomes part of our strategic plan, and based on the budget, we choose the top 3 projects to work on for the 3 to 5 year period that we are working on those projects. So it would be the same scenario here within Flossmoor, but also with an interactive budget so that the community members can actually see what we're spending the money on, when the money is being spent, so that they would also be aware of if we do need to reprioritize, because right now we're in a recession. That's the whole of the United States. And so there might be times where we need to reprioritize our budget, and some of those things that were priorities may need to be bumped down or waited on for the next fiscal year. So I think that's what I would actually start with that process.
Yeah, so I think the last budget numbers were 8.3 million or so that we had as a village. That was a projected budget. We have some business opportunities that I know that's being planned. I'm actually in favor of them. As some of the build out near the Meyer area and some others. I think as we're looking at planning these economic developments, we can also make a projection on what tax revenue we should be able to receive from all of those economic developments. So we can build this projection of not only what we have today, but we can build a projection of what we anticipate to come in the future. And then based upon what those numbers are, we can also then look at, well, what is the not most important to you, but most important to the village overall. What things in our failing infrastructure are going to fail if we don't take action on it today, right? We really have to prioritize taking care of the things, not necessarily by cost, but what are the things that are going to be, do we have a water main that needs to be replaced, and that's going to, break. So we have to be smart about the way we use the dollars, and we have to be smart about the timeline in which we get those things done. And we can do that by actually making appropriate forecast. And we have a bunch of finance people here. We can make appropriate forecast on if we fill these businesses in the next 2-3 years with this level of business and this level of projected income coming into the village from those. We're going to make some projections of not only what our budget is today, what our budget is in the next year, and the next 2 years, and the next 3 years, and use those also to make projections of what infrastructure can we focus on, what can we tackle based upon the true necessity of doing it with those over that same timeline, same year, same second year, same third year.
Yeah, unfortunately, Dr. Dorsey took my thunder a little bit there, but that's
I'm
okay.
gonna do that the rest of your life.
That's all right. So I'm going to throw the last bit in. It's a little simple. I think that, of course, optics are very important. We're going to be a community to draw business. The optics of the community is important, or should be at the top of the list. So the beautification has to be important. Roads have to stand up. The community has to stand up, and I know that there's, again, projects in play for downtown and throughout the village, which is great. But it is tantamount to the success of gaining businesses into our community. They're not going to want to go anywhere where they don't feel as though the community can support them or will support them because of medium household income. And the optics of this community has always been at the top of the list and need to remain there.
Thank you, Belgee. Mayor Nelson was next.
Thank you so much. The question was, how do you prioritize infrastructure and then funding of that infrastructure, those infrastructure projects? I'm going to focus on three main areas: flooding, roads, and then also your water service. So with flooding, that is an area that is ripe for grants work. You can't get grants usually for roads, but you can get it to help solve flood issues. So we had a 1985 study that was done that identified 12 key areas that we could improve in order to reduce flooding in the Heather Hill neighborhood and also our downtown area. We have done every single project on that list except for the Heather Hill, Berry Lane, and Viaduct project. That project, we knew we could get grants, especially with President Biden coming into office and the Biden infrastructure bill. So we went after grants for those projects hardcore. Got about $5 million worth of grants that helped us take this project that had cost millions of dollars to residents and businesses over the past 40 or so years to get that project done. The last couple of phases of that project will happen this summer and then possibly into the spring of 2026. The next issue is roads. When I came into office, there were $18 million worth of road work that needed to be done. What we did was we rated all of our roads with a PASER system, P-A-S-E-R. It's a rating system that goes from 0 to 10, 0 being the worst road, 10 being the best road, so that we can create an inventory and project costs for when and how to repair the roads. The other thing that I did that we hadn't done before was I implemented a crack sealing program. And some of you go, oh gosh, that's so ugly, but it saves us 7 years. It adds 7 years to the useful life for the roads. So when you have an $18 million problem, you have to start looking at ways to be more efficient and effective with what you have. Pennies on the dollar is what crack sealing cost us, and it buys us another 7 years so that we can start catching up on all of these things. And then also back to the grants, that grant work is offsetting our costs on the flood mitigation. We're hoping to have $1.3 million to start a massive road project in 2026. So that's why that's so important that we keep hammering in on the grants for those flood projects. And then the last part is water service. That's something that is constantly top of mind. We were able to lock in with the Village of Homewood through Chicago Heights onto Hammond for 25-year annual increases capped at 3%. That is huge to get out from under the thumb of Chicago and Chicago water prices that fluctuated like a roller coaster. Flossmoor did it. We finished that work in 2021, and I'm really proud of it. But there's still some more work to be done in that area, and those are the types of things that we do through grants and then also surpluses that we have in the budget. Yeah, I agree, and especially this time of year, after all of the freeze thaw, it's especially bad, right? Public Works will get out there once the asphalt factories open up and start filling some of those holes. I wish I had $18 million and I could go redo every street that needed it. I know before I came into office, they made a decision to do a thin layer of resurfacing on some of the streets. The problem is that doesn't last as long. They shouldn't have done that. So we're working at the problem. It's not an overnight solution. But like I said, the crack ceiling, it extends the useful life for about 7 years. And I'm gonna take Anthel back to Public Works, see what it's rated at, and see where it would be in the list. Thank you.
The next hand I saw was Troy, then Driscoll, and Holmes, and then we'll get you.
So how I would prioritize infrastructure projects would definitely be with flooding in our villages. I have been talking with residents all over Flossmoor, and there are flooding issues, of course. But at the same time, a big priority of mine, since I have been walking these streets, getting people's votes, are the streets and roads. Flossmoor Hills is not good. It's not. And as you said, here in Ballantrae, we have many potholes as well, but particularly in Flossmoor Hills, the residents feel over there that they have been overlooked, by the village because they sit on the outlying area. Now, I do know that there are priorities in place, how we examine things, but we need to look at really where our kids are playing and where our school buses are going, and look at those kinds of infrastructure projects to prioritize. Now, how are we gonna pay for it? We have relied a lot on grants the past few years, thank God. But we are also, some of those grants are running out. So we're gonna need to make some tough choices in the next few years. And that is one of the main reasons why I decided to run as trustee, because I wanted to be able to sit at that table with my expertise, but plus because I've got the heart of the village behind me, and I've got people already telling me about projects. There's also a way of banding together. I know that our president of the Heather Hill Association is here. Leonard Harris is the president of the Flossmoor Hills Association. They've been talking about banding together with the Ballantrae Association so that we can go to the village in numbers to look at the infrastructure that's happening in our neighborhoods.
Your next Driscoll, and then we'll get Gary.
You know, if we go back to Mr. Wilder, something that when he was on the board I learned from the beginning was we have a save and spend policy at Flossmoor. So we save the money first before we start looking for projects to do. We're not picking them backwards, so to speak, and creating projects and trying to figure out how we're going to get the money to do it. And to Dr. Rodgers' point, we have a strategic forecasting program in place. We do it every 5 years. We send out questionnaires to every resident in the village. What are your priorities? What would you like to see done? Whether it's beautification, marketing, business development. You list it out. Every resident in the village lists it out. It comes together. We have a consultant that helps us sit down we've locked down together for 2 days. It's not fun. It's a lot of arguing over our priorities, but we have to do this with the mayor, the board, every department head, all the Flossmoor staff, and the mayor and the trustees. And we make a list and what are our priorities, and we hash it out, and we come to what are the most important infrastructure problems. What is on everybody's list at the top that we can agree on, and then we go about a way to figure out how we're going to pay for it. Whether it's going to be, maybe we have to go to referendum. That's part of the beauty of being a non-home rule community. We don't just let's just raise everybody's taxes. We've got to then go back to the citizens, ask you for permission to do a referendum to do that. And if you give us that power, then we go ahead and complete that infrastructure problem. So we do have a framework in place already for determining those infrastructure projects and a way to accomplish them. And we'll just continue to do that. The roads all have a designation because doesn't matter. Every community says their roads are the worst. There's some real bad ones out there. And we do have a system in place where we have the lasers go up and down the streets and measure the road damage. So it's a list on there, and this list is published on the website somewhere, or you can get it from the building department where your road is on that list to be fixed.
Okay, Gary, then Joni.
Yeah, so it's a very good question. Infrastructure is wildly expensive. It's ridiculous how much it costs. And outside of Ballantrae, most of Flossmoor, our infrastructure is 60 years old or older, with the exception of a few other locations. So we talk about the roads, but we also got to talk about what's underneath. We've got lead pipe replacements, we've got sewer lines, so there's all kinds of stuff. And I think one of the things that's really important is we have to maintain in a responsible way. I think one of the things that if you look in the past, I don't believe that Flossmoor has always made great decisions in the past 20, 30 years about keeping that infrastructure up. And you guys have a house. If you let your roof go too long, now it's going to cause problems inside, and that's going to cause problems all the way down. And that's what we're dealing with the infrastructure. So we're playing catch up in a lot of this stuff. So to answer the question, how do you prioritize? It is a balance, and it's a tough balance. The good thing is our public works director, John Brunke, I'm telling you, he is unbelievable. What we have to do is take the recommendations and take his expertise that he works on those things with the village manager and brings in, he makes the recommendations. Then really where our part is as board members is we have to be responsible in how we're voting on those things. So when they come in, we have to make the decision. Is this actually what's best? Should we be doing more? Should we be doing less? The good thing is we can ask for more, we can ask for less, and we can do other things. One of the things we've done in the past is just when they come in and they say, here's the bid, one of the questions you always ask is there anything we're not thinking about? Let me think about that and come back. And oftentimes there's not, but sometimes there are. And we just don't want surprises. And then I think another thing is when we have money left over, for instance, with the viaduct project, I think don't hold me to the number, it's over $1 million. If things go well, we'll have over $1 million that we can put toward roads. That's a huge chunk, but it's $300,000, $350,000 per mile of road. Is that accurate?
More than 500 if you do the sidewalks.
Okay, and yeah, so that takes care of some, but when we use that chunk responsibly and get that in there, which is left over because we've done other things, that helps. The other thing is our water and sewer fund. For a long time was drawing off of our general fund. So we've done a lot to make sure, and unfortunately we had to raise rates a little bit to make this happen, but our water and sewer fund, if things go well, looks like it's going to be self-sufficient, which means that's less we're taking off of the general fund. So this whole thing is this massive ballet of moving parts, and what we really have to do to balance is make sure that every decision we're making, we're balancing it on a large scale. Is this best overall? And then just real quick, the difference, so some of the stuff that you're seeing on the roads that are being repaired are just patches, so hot patches and cold patches on potholes. Those only last a year. We have to come back and patch them again. The crack sealing is a little bit different. What we do is we take the roads that are kind of in the middle of the range of how bad they are, and we seal those. That's gonna last for 7 years. But the pothole stuff, you don't have to wait for 7 years to get potholes done. And if you've got that many potholes, my guess is that your street's probably higher up on the need list. So hopefully we can get some answers for you on when we hope to be able to get that done. But again, if we can get that extra 2 miles that we weren't planning on, that means that your street is going to come up sooner. So it's a big project. It takes a lot of collaboration. It takes a lot of foresight and thinking it all through. But yes, outside of our services with police, fire, that public works and the infrastructure is it's huge. So we just have to be really responsible. Same way we have to be responsible as homeowners.
We'll take one more response from Joni. I'd like to get to another couple of questions that we have here.
Yes. So as we think about where we are as a nation and what we were able to take advantage of under various leadership, that's the same framework we have to think about what we can do as a town moving forward. So when under Joe Biden's administration, he was big on infrastructure. We were able to do a lot with applying for grants and getting some of our infrastructure needs caught up. Now that we are under a different administration where federal grants, state grants, and anything that we can think of that could be a bonus to us to save some of our money and spend theirs is limited. Looking at things from where we are truly, where it appears that we're going to be entering into a recession in terms of what projects we do, in terms of priorities, it's really going to be important to be very thoughtful about where our resources are coming from, what is going to be at our disposal, what, property taxes we're going to be able to collect from residents, because people may be out of jobs. And I'm not trying to be dismal, but in terms of big thought leaders, we have to think about everything from A to Z, because we are entering into a new time. I think that we can still be functional in that time and space. We just have to know what we're dealing with and know what the rules are. And so when we look at what our infrastructure opportunities would be, our roads and streets, we have to see where we are at that particular time. As has been said, it is very important. It is our example of our quality of life when we're able to make sure our cars aren't getting to run down when we're driving down the street. So we do have to keep those things in mind, and we can't continue to defer them. We did the PASER study when I came on the board back in 2017, 2018, and that study hasn't necessarily been updated in that period of time. So the roads that got really bad ratings back then that haven't been done are just continuing to deteriorate. I think it would be very helpful for residents to be able to see where those road ratings are in this day and time, so that when opportunities present themselves to do new roads, we know which ones are going to be next in line. And we really don't know which ones we'll be able to do until we know what kind of money we have to spend because of that save and spend philosophy. But as long as we're being transparent with the residents in terms of how we're thinking about approaching a project, I think residents can appreciate that information as the village board is making the decisions. And the other part that I just wanted to add on, because I heard a lot of safety concerns as it pertained to Meyer and potential new development. Because Meyer was a infrastructure economic development that came after Ballantrae existed, some of the thoughts were not in place in terms of keeping communities safe or attracting crime. And so I think it is very important that the village think about that, as was mentioned, all the way down the pipeline, because it is just going to it won't get better. As new businesses come, we have to be thoughtful as a village and think about that surrounding area as we approach a solution.
But I'm actually going to combine two questions. I will read them, but then you will notice that they do sound very similar. The first one states the word transparency is consistently being used. What is not being relayed to the community? Then the second question states there is a lack of community trust due to the police shooting and firing of the police chief. How do you plan to rebuild the community's trust? Yes.
Well, I said transparency, and I'm going to tell you what I meant by transparency. I live in Heather Hill. Some of the things you all mentioned, like the streets, our streets are bad. My street is one of them. I run down the street and I almost twisted my ankle. So I see the streets a lot. But the reason I said transparency is because we do have floods in the community. And the reason I'm sitting up here today is because the detention basin that was done in Heather Hill, we thought was the viaduct project. So when I'm talking about transparency and communication, there also has to be a connection to the neighborhood that I live in. Flossmoor Road is the viaduct. Heather Hill is the community. So when we heard viaduct project in Heather Hill, we didn't think we would have this huge, massive detention basin behind our school. We didn't think we would lose our tennis courts. We didn't think we would lose green space. And I have 3 kids across all districts. I have one at HF, I have one at Parker, and I have one at Heather Hill who's going to be there for a while because he's in 2nd grade. So for me, that was a big issue because I didn't know it was coming because I heard viaduct project and I ignored it because that's not my neighborhood. It's my neighborhood, but it's not immediate. So that was a problem for me. We didn't hear that. And I, like I said, I live in Heather Hill, and there's many people that I've talked to, they didn't think that was going to affect us until it did. And by the time we showed up to the Village Hall, we were getting a presentation of 7 options, but they were already told to us. So we were told, even though we were saying we didn't really get a voice into speaking for those projects. So even though we have something that is going to help out the community, we didn't feel like we had a voice or a say in it, especially for people who have children that go to Heather Hill. So if you don't have a child at Heather Hill, it's not going to hit you the same way. Your property may be it may help with the flooding and everything, but we have children back there, and our kids are affected. There's already been kids in the detention basin, so if you don't know that, then that's something you should probably talk to some Heather Hill residents about, because it definitely affected us, and that affected me especially because my kids are over there at the park all the time. So that's what I mean by transparency, and that's what the community members meant by transparency. We didn't have that type of transparency in terms of communication. It was almost like it was hidden from us, so we wouldn't pay attention to it as much. That's what I'm talking about. And what was the second part? Going too long?
Yeah,
All right.
he's gonna keep our time in for us back there. Mayor Nelson and then we have Gary.
Sure, I think transparency and trust go hand in hand. I'm going to start with trust. How do you build trust? You have to take the time to learn about everybody's story. Everybody has a different story. You can't judge a book by its cover. You have to take the time, and it takes a lot of time, but it's time that I think is well spent, because as I'm trying to advocate for folks, I need to know what makes you tick, what ticks you off, where are you coming from, and how can I better advocate for you to get done what you need to get done. So that's, I think, how you build trust, is taking the time with residents. And to that end, I think just a lot of folks actually have my personal cell phone number, and if you don't have it, you know somebody who does. I get calls from 6 a.m. till 11 p.m., 7 days a week. You have an issue, you're not getting the help you need, call me. I'm happy to advocate for you. Transparency, I have a Facebook page and an Instagram account, Michelle for Flossmoor. Michelle for Flossmoor. I post everything that I do there. Go check it out, reach out to me, I'm out of time, but I would be happy to talk with you. We have board meetings, they're all via Zoom, they don't have to be via Zoom, but we put it out there because we believe in transparency and we believe in building trust.
So that question is a huge question, and the part that I want to kind of talk about, and I will keep it short, is, a lot of this, it impacted 63% of our community a lot different than it did the rest. For me, I have to look at something that's really important. I have to understand who I'm talking with, and who is having the issues and what those are. Me as a white guy, when there's a conversation about race, the worst thing that can happen is I can be uncomfortable. I might be called a racist. Typically, that's the worst that can happen. So it's a conversation about comfort. For African Americans or minorities, it's a conversation about safety. And I have to identify that. I have to know that my perspective is coming from a very different place. And I have to be okay being uncomfortable for the sake of someone else's safety. And I think when I approach it that way, and I think when we approach it that way, it's the responsible thing to do. I think it's the right thing to do. But honestly, it takes a lot more listening before we start talking. There's a lot more questions, because I have to sit here and say, I don't know. Therefore, I need perspective so I can learn even what questions to ask and how people need to be communicated with. So there's a much bigger conversation in that. I want to keep it short, but from my perspective, that's how we start.
Thank you. It was Joni, and then we had Troy. Yeah, next one.
I apologize. My ice water is not working for me. My mouth is getting a little dry, so. But I think that trust is a huge part of our community, and because some of us that sit here are elected officials, the community relies on being able to trust us. And I will just say something as simple as, I mentioned in an ad that I took out in the Chronicle that there was a $1 million operating deficit. If you scan the information outside, you'll be able to follow the path that there is a $1 million operating deficit. We've mentioned it in our literature. It is on the village's website as such, and people just want us to be honest and transparent. Those things go hand in hand, and it's not hard to do. If that's what we're working with, that's what we're working with. But let's admit what's going on. Being able to admit what's going on is a huge issue. We live in a community where we have various diversity, and diversity is very important on the surface, but in reality, in action, we've had residents come to board meetings and express their concerns, and it fell on deaf ears. So when we are thinking about how to be a community of collaboration and trust, we have to be able to act with collaboration and demonstrate trust.
Nobody wanted the former police chief to be successful more than I did. I found him out of a nationwide search. My eye was on long-term success here in the village of Flossmoor. I believed in him. I was devastated when things didn't work out. He had some issues that he needed to fix, and there were several different viewpoints on the board with how to address his deficiencies. Some folks wanted to give him till the end of his term. Other folks wanted us to lower our standards for that position. And other folks wanted us to hire more people to fill in where he wasn't performing. I will not sacrifice the standards that we have for the directors of our departments, especially a major department like the police department. That was an incredibly painful decision. Any personnel issue is an incredibly painful decision. It wasn't a difficult decision though, because at the end of the day, he told me 3 times, in spite of our best efforts to get things back on track, he told me 3 times, I'm not gonna talk about how to improve my performance with you, Mayor. And that's the truth. So how do we move forward? We have an amazing person right in front of you, Chief Carl Estelle. Chief Carl Estelle. And when we were looking to hire a new police chief, the first go around, the Illinois State Board of Training said, can't have Carl, can't transfer his incredible service from California. I was disappointed. Carl was my favorite on the list, but you have to have a sworn officer in that chief position. So we had to look outside of the community, outside of the department, to find somebody with the qualifications who we thought could move the department and the village forward. A year later, we went back to that Training and Standards Board. That Training and Standards Board told me, sure, we'll take him. Imagine my surprise and frustration after what we went through, that all of a sudden they would have let us bring Carl into that role. It was a huge honor though, because we are in amazing hands. He is a resident of Ballantrae, a resident of the village. He cares deeply about the men and women on his force. He's got incredible qualifications and expertise, and he's the guy who's going to lead us forward.
Okay, thank you. So we've got, oh, I'm sorry, you were, yes, go ahead.
So when we talk about trust and transparency, there's a huge communication issue that we have. And for whatever reason, we don't want to address it. This village leadership could benefit from bias reduction training. I teach this at the University of Illinois. And I'll give you a few examples of what I can explain of how it was missed. If you guys recall the comment that was made by the village manager about Jarrell's speech, was there any understanding of questioning the way an African American speaks, how that would respond, what response that would get? The deputy village manager wrote a post pretty similar that has some racial undertone to it. Just a couple of boards ago, so we're talking about a year ago with that, but just a couple of boards ago, one of the trustees raised an issue of us educating our Latino citizens, residents, on their rights concerning ISIS. One of the response was, that's nonsense or silliness. Look at the board, look at the video. I'm certain Mr. Crump has it in the notes. Then the other response was, from the attorney that sat there at the time, was, are you trying to tell us to post information for them to evade and elude law enforcement? That's privileged speech. You can call it nonsense and silliness when you don't have to worry about looking the part for someone to pull you over or someone coming into your home. Am I calling this racism? No, but I am calling it an opportunity for some much needed racial language speech, some understanding of who we are as a difference. It doesn't make us bad people. We all have biases. But when we don't learn from it, if you step on someone's toe, what do? You apologize.
Implicit.
When you misspeak, when you don't understand, as Gary said, you go out and you learn what you said that wasn't correct. I'm not calling anyone bad people, but we do have an opportunity and we do have a necessity for some bias reduction training. That's one of the things that is my expertise. It's one of my focuses in my doctorate, and I'd love to, regardless of this vote, I'd love to offer what I get paid $5,000 to teach a day. I'd love to offer that for free.
Thank you. Troy?
Yes, I would like to respond.
I'm sorry, was that a follow-up? I didn't.
I just think the audience needs to be able to have a little more input.
Yeah, you have to just raise your hand. Yeah, did you want to? Was that?
Yeah, I did before you guys get off the subject. When we talk about transparency, I'm an open book. I want to vote for the best person, so I'm trying to make my decision, as most of us are. But when you all talk about transparency, I want to say this as respectfully as possible. I watched a lot of the current members say, yes, we'll support gating if that's what you want. And how many Ballantrae Watch members are here? And I know that every interaction we had, we were told, although we know that there's some obstacles with private roads and so forth and so on, we were met with resistance. I watched all of you say, I would support that if that's what you wanted. We got nothing but resistance from this current administration, and I don't know exactly who they talked to, but every member that reached out to the board in some aspect, whether it was your receptionist, said, we do not support that. It's not gonna happen. Now, we know there's some challenges with the road. I know that, with maintenance, privacy, and all of that, Ballantrae Park. But all we wanted was someone to say, we hear what you're asking, let's talk about it. But to be told that the village of Flossmoor will not support that goes directly against everything you all just said. So that's the first thing about this case. That's the first thing about transparency. The second thing is that we put it out there. Our community watch has been effective in Ballantrae. We have something like 20-something eyes and ears. We built a great relationship with the police. Because guess what? The police are not going to keep us safe. They can't do it alone. It's the eyes and the ears of the residents. And I put it out there to several of you all on social media platforms saying, can we have a Flossmoor-wide initiative? Our Ballantrae Watch will train every community. Why do you think people commit crime in the broad daylight in front of a camera, in front of residents? Because they know they won't talk. But that's not the case in Ballantrae. We have 25 voices that will talk. And now we have other residents that jump on board. But we also did not have anyone step up and say, yeah, we know that could be a great thing and we'll support you on it. So all I'm saying is this, and I wish all of you luck, but when we talk about transparency, say the same thing in private that you say in public, because we are educated people, and all of us get up just like you and go out there and make a difference in the world. We want you to know that we are watching, we are listening, we are looking, and how you treat us tells us how to vote. And I think the biggest thing we should be doing is getting residents out. There's no reason we should have a few residents here. Our big thing before the election is to get people out, and I hope you all will do this again, because again, we're looking for you to tell us the truth. I don't want your political answer. I want you to tell me in private and public, no, I'll do it, yes, I'll do it. And the second part to my question is this, and I want to ask each one of you this: will you support a Flossmoor-wide community watch initiative where every community has community watch members that are guiding the safety in their community? If you can't do that, you should not be running.
Can I respond? I'm gonna respond. I haven't been able to respond.
You haven't been able to respond. We'll take your initial from that, and then Gary, you're next.
I thought you already did transparency.
Okay, gotcha, man. You ready? Troy?
Oh, good. Thank you. So, let's go back to the transparency question. What is not being relayed? There are other communities that post their receipts. And I think that's something we can do. As far as we've been seeing what's happened in Dalton and other things, that's not happening here. But guess what? We can be a forefront because they're all looking at us. They look at Flossmoor as that beacon down here in Southland. So I think we can be a forefront and actually do something. Even though I do not think that there's anything going on shady in government right now in Flossmoor, what I'm saying is that we can be transparent enough. The police firing, I'm going to address that because that was an instance where my husband and I sat back and we said, what's going on here? Now, I was able to speak to the mayor afterwards, both my husband and I did, and there was an explanation, but the communication from the village after the firing just made more questions than answers for my husband and I. And that is, we're in an interracial relationship. This completely affected us because this was the first black police chief of this town. And it just didn't look right in our sense as a town. So I felt there could have definitely been more communication, better communication after the fact. And I've definitely told that to the village officials. Now, as far as Flossmoor wide for Neighborhood Watch, I've been on the campaign trail, Les, and I've been putting that up ever since you told us at the one meeting. I think that is a great idea to get those involved. And I've been hearing from our Chief Estelle about it's that community policing. We've got to get the community together to come together and actually do these. And I think your idea for the Neighborhood Watch would be in a great way. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, so to address both your questions. First off, I am not aware of any board discussion that's happened about a gate for Ballantrae, so I've not been a part of any.
We was talking to the official director.
Yeah, no, I understand. I'm just to clarify that. If you ever feel like you're bringing something to the village, to a director, to anything else, and it's not going anywhere, please come and talk to me. I guarantee you, I have sat down through the Madeline Miller shooting all the way through Heather Hill. I've talked with over 20 people, sat down over a cup of coffee and said, what are your concerns? What is bothering you? What do you feel is not being heard? And then I go and I say, this is what I'm being told. We have to do better at those things, we do. So if you feel like you're being roadblocked on something, the board has a lot more power than I think people understand, because we also have, my job, I vote on things, but I also see myself as a community leader. If I didn't see that and I'm in this position, I should quit. So if there's something the community is trying to communicate and it's not making it, I'm asking you, please come and talk to me. I guarantee you, I will go and I will talk to the people that need to be talked to about, hey, this is the frustration, this is what someone is feeling. We have to answer these questions. And to me, when I said yes, I'll vote for that. Again, if we can solve for X, which I think we can, absolutely, I'll do that. As far as the watch, I think it's a fantastic idea. I think one of the things you said that's really critical and key is training. Like, you guys are trained, so you know it's there. The thing I would absolutely want to make sure that there is, like you said, you are connected with the police department in this and the officers, and there's great relationships there for you guys in that. If we do it Flossmoor wide, I would want to model that and make sure that that is exactly the same everywhere else, where people are trained, they understand what their role is in a watch, because we all have seen things where people take it way too far. You can't be on a watch and conceal carry. That's a no. Like, there's all those things we have to go into, and that's where we rely on Carl in the police department to say, okay, how do we make this work? And if we can make this work, and it's obviously working for Ballantrae, absolutely. I think it may not necessarily be a quick thing, but we can start those conversations quickly. I think the thing that I feel with a lot of this stuff is people just feel disenfranchised, like there's no seat at the table. And if you do have a seat at the table, it's a token seat at the table. And that's worse than not having a seat. So if you're there, it has to be, we're listening and we're gonna hear. So if you feel frustration, if you're pissed off and you're angry and you're mad, please come and talk to me. I wanna hear that, because that's my role here. I'm not just here I get $525 a month to do this. The amount of time I spend in a week, I'm not doing this for money. I'm doing it because I love the community and I want to make sure people feel that connection. So I could talk longer about this, and people would love to have more conversation with you. But I think to address those two questions, We have to have those conversations. When people are feeling frustrated, they need a conduit. If you feel like you're being roadblocked, if you feel like you're being railroaded, come talk to me. There's others here that you can talk to. And then as a board, we have to bring that to the village and say, guys, come on, we gotta do better. We gotta do better. So.
Thank you. We had Mayor Nelson, then it was Driscoll and Joni.
Thank you so much. And Mr. Rodgers, I'm sorry, I have not talked, nobody's reached out to me about supporting the gate or had any conversations with me about that, but I would definitely be happy to be a part of those conversations or learn more about exactly what plans you have moving forward and what your interests are. Like I said earlier, my primary job as mayor is to advocate for you and the residents. So please, I'm happy to have those conversations and figure out how we can make it happen, if that's what the HOA wants to have happen. In terms of the community watch program, I think those are awesome. And if you want to sit down with Flossmoor Hills, and we have Heather Hill representation here tonight also, that'd be a meeting that's a no-brainer for me. I would love to bring everybody together to say, do you have an interest? If so, how can we grow that interest? What is it working with our police department to figure out what that training looks like? Because if it's village-wide, it has to check some additional boxes, right? If we're putting our name on it, it's got to check some additional legal boxes. But would be happy to bring folks together to have that type of discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Driscoll and then Joni.
Yeah, I'll try to keep this short. I'd never heard about the gated issue previously, and this is the first I've heard about the watch. Quite frankly, I think it's a great idea. It's a great idea. Same thing. If we can see what's going on there, where it's all legit, we can copy it and put it in other parts of Flossmoor. I think it's a great idea. Transparency is a key to government. Everybody has to feel like they're getting all the information that everybody else is getting. We did put out, 31 separate meetings, pieces of information on the Heather Hill Basin. It wasn't enough. Excuse me.
Viaduct project.
Wait, debating or wait, commenting. Is this my time?
I said viaduct project. Sorry.
The original project was to relieve the flooding in Heather Hill on Berry Lane. That was the first phase of this project, which it accomplished. However, it's not complete. The pipes underneath Berry Lane are not connected to the viaduct or the basin, which they can then drain responsibly into Butterfield Creek. It's one and the same project. Night after night, prior to COVID, we had those Heather Hill residents asking us to please fix the flooding. Yes. This was a Heather Hill flooding project. Also encompasses the later phases with the viaduct in the Central Business District, because that was becoming equally critical. Anyways, transparency is important. We can always do better, and we'll try to do better.
Going back to the gate and fence matters in Ballantrae, that matter, as you heard, hasn't been presented to the village board. So this is news to us, and I look forward to helping out with that project to see what other security measures could be taken. As it pertains to the transparency, I think that we as a town, can understand when people say they just want to have a voice and a seat at the table. It is welcoming to be able to call a trustee, a mayor, and voice your concerns. But know that your biggest voice is at the board meetings, because everyone gets to hear the same information at the same time, and you get the result or a response. I would say that would be an additional thing that we can do better, because once you come to the board meeting and express your concern, sometimes we as board members don't even know what the result was of that. It's like watching the news and you see something that happened and you're like, oh, I wonder how things turned out for them. So as a board, as a town, we can do better with our transparency. When you think of opportunities to solve problems. You always want to think of how we can do things better. And what I'm hearing tonight and what I continue to hear is the community continues to say how we can do better, yet we say, well, we did that okay. We did this, we resolved the flooding, but that isn't the point of the matter. What is important is that we take residents' concerns into consideration and we work together collaboratively, like we're talking about community policing and keeping our community safe. If we bound arms and became as a united front, as was said earlier, nobody would come into our community. So we have to be able to demonstrate that on the village board, as we're working with residents and in our communities. That's the way that we keep Flossmoor healthy. That's the way that we keep Flossmoor vibrant. That's the way we keep Flossmoor active. We are one of the highest income earning, educated towns in the country in terms of diversity. Let's keep that going, but we have to acknowledge that there's a problem and opportunities to address our weaknesses.
The election has not happened. Everyone here has the opportunity to ask yourself, am I being a politician or am I being a leader of my people in my city, in my village? And it's a real question to ask yourself, because it's real easy to think you said something that made us feel good. But again, we are as intelligent as you are. We got to do something different if you want my vote.
You have my number. Please
And we've talked so much, and you're right. And I'm not pointing to one person, Michelle, Mayor Michelle Milnes. I'm trying to get the information that's gonna have me make the right vote. And I know everybody else does. So right now, you all have a clean slate, but I really think you're all being politicians, and I want you to not be that. I want you to talk to us this way all the time, in private and in public, because that is the only way we're gonna trust and move forward.
Well, not all of us currently serve. So,
I don't want to point people out.
No, but I just want to make that clear, though. Not all of us currently serve, so we would not have been part of that three. But what I encourage
As politicians, that's what politicians do.
But what I encourage you to do, and this is what I do, I show up at that board meeting. If something is so strong of an issue for me, I gather people together and I show up at that board meeting. So then there won't be any, oh, you didn't know? Oh, I spoke to this person, because it's recorded and it's documented. Just show up at the board meeting.
You know, my comment is, you know, growing up in Markham, a block from Hazelcrest, there was this, you know, if you were speeding in Hazelcrest, you were gonna get a ticket. They had already established that. Now, about 4 or 5 years ago, my neighbor, I had a conversation with Deputy Chief Taylor, because we were trying to do a campaign to convince the people in Flossmoor to lock their doors. The word was out that you come to Flossmoor, walk around, put on some door handles, and you can get the radio, the keys. My neighbor left his keys in the car. So they tracked his car back to Harvey. So the word was out. So the fact that you're asking for a neighborhood watch for Ballantrae and then to connect it, that is mandatory. Cause we can't, I'm gonna be pissed. I live in Old Floss. I'm gonna be pissed if y'all got it and I don't. So the reality is we need to build something. So, I mean, how many commissions do we have? We got the Green Commission, we got the Planning Commission. We need a neighborhood watch commission. So wait, y'all meeting, just like he said, then at that point, it's part of everything that's happening. And that means everybody in Flossmoor gets engaged. So we're not talking about just expanding it. It has to be expanded because it has to be Flossmoor wide. Because safety can, I mean, you know, those they know. Because we're literally not locking our doors. We're not locking our corridors. We're not locking, and when the word is out that, man, you know, they're not even locking nothing over there. That makes it real easy. So we need to establish that community-wide. Thank you.
So we got Belgee in there first, and then I think, right? Did you say? Okay. And again, you guys, I'm just gonna ask you, because I know we gotta narrow down, and we expect that you guys are gonna hang back and talk to people, so we're trying to include that time in there. So if you could please keep your comments down to just a minute or two.
All right, sure. Well, I'll be quick. I just want to say I think it's a phenomenal idea. Part of my platform involves self-policing because we couldn't possibly hire the amount of police we need to secure our community in this era. So I think it is important that we self-police. Great idea. I would love to talk to you more about it because I would certainly like to have such a thing in my neighborhood, in my area as well. Okay, just one.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I'm not a politician. I'm sitting up here because I'm a community member just like you. There were some things that happened. I needed to get involved, you know, and so that's why I'm here. I'm telling people what I heard in Heather Hill. We went to the meeting and we voiced our concern, but the solution was already in place. So for us, it was too late, you know. So I'm here, like I said, I'm not a politician. What I'm telling you is fact. I don't have anything to hide, you know. If there is something that I don't represent, my no is gonna be my no, and I'm not gonna go against my own personal beliefs. So I'm here to be your voice because I wanted somebody to represent me, and I felt like I wasn't represented. You know, I felt like my neighborhood wasn't represented, and so now we have things in place. And that's the reason I'm here, because the residents asked me, Carolyn, you do a good job at doing this, why don't you? And that's why I'm here. I don't wanna be a politician. I got 3 boys, I could be home and being a mom. But I'm actually here because I actually do wanna make a change. Like I said, I do a lot of community things anyway. I'm in the field, I get to hear things. And so that's why I'm here to represent. And then the neighborhood watch thing, I don't have a problem with that. My grandfather ran a neighborhood watch in the city of Chicago, in the south side of Inglewood. I was a part of that. I would be a part of it now because I'm also a person who was robbed at gunpoint. I don't like how that feels. I want to walk in a neighborhood that feels safe. So if I see something, I'm calling the police. Plus, I have a husband who is a federal officer. So I want people to feel safe. It didn't feel good when a gun was pointing in my face, at my house. So I represent a neighborhood watch. If I see something, I'm going to call and tell.
Because my expertise in marketing, I want to do something I don't think is being done anywhere else in any other community, and that is putting everything that you need to know on an app that comes to your phone. As much as I love going to the flossmoor.org website, it's a million things on there, and it is confusing sometimes to find what you want. That's something that has never been done, and that's my way of kind of thinking outside the box. So anytime there's anything that comes up, it should be on that app. And hey, when you watch TV, you don't watch a commercial where you have to read. I think a lot of things that the village wants to do, we need to be on camera talking to you about what that is and what we're going to do, especially when it comes to some of these construction projects. I've heard village officials talk about the construction projects, and I've listened to how that construction project is going to happen, and then I can go to the site and I can read it, and it's just like, oh my God, I don't know what that means. So a lot of times, a lot of things that the village is looking to do as far as improvement, safety, it's all there, but sometimes it's hard to figure out what it really means. So my thing is create an app so everything about the village comes to your pocket. And if it comes to your pocket, it'll be a lot less for it to be confused. And the reality is politicians can never act like they are smarter than their residents. And in this community in particular, there are a lot of smart people, a lot of business owners, a lot of professionals. I would also like to start a professional registry. There are times when we're looking to do something and we might not even know that there's somebody that's been running that business or doing that thing or consulting on the very thing that we're looking to do. Like, I just happened to, somebody reached out to me and like, hey, you do content, like, can you do content for the village? That's how I got here. So at the end of the day, everybody here can possibly contribute. And at the end of the day, it just means more engagement. I love being engaged with the community. And I'll be honest, I would go to a village hall meeting every once in a while. But like, now that I've been campaigning and I'm at these village halls, there's a lot that everybody can learn about what's happening with the village. So I want to kind of change the game when it comes to how municipalities connect with their residents. Thank you.
So to answer the question, for me personally, I think to transform, you have to admit where you're screwing up. You have to admit what you don't do well. Otherwise, you don't see a need to transform. And I think for the village, we don't communicate well. We may communicate better than others, but it's obvious that the community hasn't felt communicated with well. We have to change that. I have to change that. So for me, one of the things that I learned early on when I was serving as a board member, I was a little lost, didn't quite know what the role was, so I had to start figuring out, like, my biggest thing that I had to transform was I had to speak up more. I had to speak up more in meetings, in executive session, and I had to put myself out there and screw up, say things that were stupid, say things that were not right. So I just had to start talking more. For me, the part of the transformation part, I need help with that. So someone like you, someone like Kevin, that knows how to teach that process, I gotta seek that out. But I first have to admit, I got shortcomings. There's things I don't know, there's things I screwed up, there's things I've messed up. And if I identify that, then I know where I'm starting from, I can figure out where I can go.
Next question, I will not, I just want you guys to think about it. We don't have time to answer this and you give, but I don't want to leave out what someone submitted. And it just talks about how will you ensure that your policies promote genuine diversity and inclusion rather than simply paying lip service to the concept, especially in hiring practices and community representation. There just seems to be a lot of dialogue and community conversation around that, as well as trust and transparency. So just ask you to think of that as you are providing your closing remarks. I'm just gonna go in order, if this is okay. We'll start with you, and then we'll give each person an opportunity to just provide your closing remarks. I do need a timekeeper. I wonder if you can help with that, please. Okay, thank you. And then we'll wrap up.
Yeah, I'll keep this really short. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for calling us out on the carpet. It's needed. And the more that we have to face, the more we have to answer. I think that's important for someone in our position. It's easy to not always be connected. So I really appreciate you guys' time. I appreciate the questions that were asked. If there were questions that were not, please feel free to reach out to me. I would love to answer those for you, but thank you for organizing this. And I think it shows that there's a lot more discussion that has to happen. So thank you.
You know, every day of my life I'm held accountable. So when you talk about transparency, I think a huge part of that is making sure that we're held accountable. You guys have the ability to do that. Monitor how we vote on everything the first and third board meeting of every month. Don't wait till election time to call us out on it. You have the ability to hold us accountable. We need to feel as if, hey, we have a voice. And just because you get elected this election, if we're monitoring the way you are, we're monitoring your vote. Does the way we vote resonate with the things that you need? Even go back and look, go back before you vote, starting March 17th, go back and look at the board minutes and see how people voted. Hold us accountable. Talk about politicians. No one in this room who knows me, if you've seen the things that I've tackled for this village, the friendships that I've lost because me being independent in my thought, but I was independent because of what was based on what the members in the village told me, there's nothing political about me. So if you want a politician, don't vote for me. But if you want someone who's ready day one to come and do the business for the village, investigate me. Don't trust me. Investigate who I am. KD for village trustee. Look up the website. Ask anyone about me. My life is an open book. Thank you.
We had a great discussion today. Thanks to the Ballantrae Homeowners Association for having us here. We got some great topics that are new to us that are we look forward to working with you in the future. My position comes down to this. As a resident of Flossmoor, I see what the other communities are doing. I want our community to be better than the other communities, quite frankly. We have to have the best fire, police, public works in the Southland. We don't want to have the highest taxes for no reason. We want to keep our taxes down. We want to have strong economic development that we're doing. I can guarantee you, we've had more positive economic development in the last 4 years than we probably had in the last 10 years combined. This is going to help us keep our property taxes down and help us remain in our homes so we're not taxed out of them. So thank you for having us this evening.
Thank you so much for having me come here. You know, these meetings, like you said, sometimes we got talking points, we got things like to talk about. What I love about being a trustee is the same thing I love about being a resident, and that is because I had a connection with trustees and the mayor and other people, I was the one that was the vessel to go back to them. And it was really nice. And at some point I was just like, man, I think I can do this. I'd like to run. But the best part about it is actually talking to people. And like, hey, 9,000 residents here. I don't know how many homes that is, but you know, it's kind of difficult for us to go out and go door to door. So I love the idea of every neighborhood having its own organization so we can just tap the organization. Because at the end of the day, if the information flows out of the village and the information flows back into the village about what you guys want, it will be better. So, you know, this is the first time I've ever run, never ran for a political office, never held a political office. And, you know, even if I am a trustee, I'm not gonna be a politician because I don't know how to do that. I know how to talk to people. I know how to connect with people. And I just wanna be a hyphen. I just wanna connect you guys to the village. That's the only way we win. Thank you.
Question about for your app that you're suggesting.
Yes.
Even though I'm very tech savvy, what about the older members? They don't like the apps. They don't want all that stuff on their phone. So how do you say for, I'm not talking about you, Kevin. I'm saying, what about our seniors in the village? We do have quite a few seniors in this village that have been here for years. They are not tech savvy.
You're exactly right.
What do we, you can't have an app saying, let's roll it out, and the seniors are not gonna be, they're not like us, they're not on their phones, they don't care about the phone, they probably still got flips.
You're exactly right. My mom is 86 years young, and I just bought her a new iPhone, and she was like, what's the code? I got a what? So I get it, and that's what I mean by, like, for me, everything that we're doing should be in video form. Now, like, I think we can find a way to get to a point where it's just the Flossmoor YouTube channel. So there's no clicking, it's just like, video title, just click on that. I think there's a way to do it, but initially, I don't like going to the village website and having to read and it's just a lot. It's a lot, and then, you know, the village has a lot going on. So at the end of the day, you're exactly right. The app isn't gonna be for everybody, especially our seniors, but you know, I don't mean just the app, but I just mean we should be talking to you guys instead of us kind of coming up with rules and things that we're gonna do and putting it so you gotta read it. You know, like, hey, everybody can watch the 10 o'clock news. There's nothing to that. So I think that we can find a way for this municipality to create a way where you sit down and go, what's happening in Flossmoor this week? And you can watch all the videos. So I didn't mean it like, oh, it's just gonna be an app. I just like the idea. I'll put that information in your pocket. It's gonna come to you instead of you having to go to it.
We gotta move on, I'm sorry. Thank you. Thank you, good question. You guys can chat more after. You can go. Next.
Thank you again to the Ballantrae Homeowners Association for inviting us tonight. I think that these conversations need to be ongoing. And I think it's equally important to talk about the structures that could be in place to make sure that there are checks and balances. As elected officials, as we've seen in other communities, you can't kick us out, you know, for the most part. So what does that mean? That we have to be able to be held accountable by residents. There are performance opportunities where we can look at the village's strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, and be able to evaluate how we're performing and make that information transparent and available to the community. In addition, what I would like to do is have all of the trustees, and I know the trustees may not be happy about this given, you know, but because compensation is not our driving force, that we have community of the whole meetings where we're able to hear more from residents, where we're able to have trustees sit on the commissions so that the information that's happening at the commission level is immediately transferred to the board. And so we have to, there are structures in place, like any organization, the village is a business, there are structures in place that allow us to be more accountable to residents, to ourselves, and to our positions. And so I, if elected, would love to be able to implement these things so that the residents don't have to question what we're doing, why we're doing it, because it's obvious, it's available, it's out there, and we've asked for your input.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you to the organizers. Thank you for coming out. I really appreciate your time. There was a comment earlier about a $1 million operating deficit. That is a planned operating deficit. We have $8.3 million in savings. Of that $8.3 million, we are required to have $3.6 million. So what do you do with that extra $4.5 million? You put it into projects that serve you, the community, because it's not up to the government to start to stockpile money without putting it back into things that make your life better. So what did we do with that $1 million operating deficit? Planned operating deficit? We put it into water systems, stormwater and sewer systems, and then we also put it into village upgrades that were necessary. Also, I'm glad somebody asked about DEI work. I was the first mayor to sign on to the Juneteenth festival, the first mayor to bring on a Juneteenth parade. I donated my own money I've got 3 kids in college, folks. I donated my own money to the Juneteenth festival. I started the public celebration of Kwanzaa. I built the Kinara because I thought that that is an amazing holiday and great way to connect and bring the community together. And then I was also the first mayor to celebrate Black Music Month by bringing in incredible talent. Some folks might know Green Velvet in the room, but some incredible talent from Ballantrae, from other areas of Flossmoor to celebrate June, Black Music Month. I am extremely proud of the work, and no matter what happens at a federal level, we will still continue to celebrate DEI here in the village of Flossmoor, making it more inclusive and welcoming to all. If you have any questions, I'm around. I'll give you my cell phone number. michelleforflossmoor.com is my website. And then also I'm on social media at Michelle for Flossmoor. You can see all of the wonderful projects that we've been working on throughout the years. Thank you again.
Thank you everyone for coming. It's great to see everyone here. I'm glad that someone asked about DEI. That is one of my platforms of what I'm doing. We need to, as a village, make sure that the vendors that we are using represent the village. So we need to make sure we're looking at Black vendors and companies like that. My friend George Lofton over there brings it up every time there's a no bid contract, that we have to make sure we are looking at the minority businesses, the principles of this company. And I'm not pandering to you. This is something I walk the walk with my husband every single day. Our production company promotes Black, brown, female, gay artists, and we give them a platform so that they can be celebrated in our industry. Now here's my final message to all of you and to all of Flossmoor. I have friends in all of the neighborhoods. After this election, we're gonna need to come together. And I am the best person to be able to do that. We can only grow if we are doing it together. It's what makes us stronger. Thank you very much. I hope you get your vote on April 1st. Early voting starts March 17th, next Monday.
I just want to thank everybody that's in this room, especially the public servants up here, because everything we heard today, some of it is not easy to hear, especially when it's about your work performance, but it's everything that we needed to do so that we can improve our work performance. When I first started this, I didn't know what I was going to do. I was collecting signatures, and then my father passed away. I didn't know if I wanted to continue on because I needed some self-care. So, I'm saying that to you because I'm here, because the people kept me going. I was going to stop because I was grieving my dad, and I'm still grieving him. The more I kept walking and talking to people, that kept my mind occupied. And what I found out is that everybody is looking for the same thing. I mean, just like Troy talked about, I can talk about, the DEI classes that I teach. I can talk about the implicit bias that I've experienced. Just did a presentation on that 2 days ago in maternity and child health. The reality is none of us wants to experience that because it doesn't feel good, because it's basically your voice is not being heard. And that's basically what I heard walking through the entire community, Ballantrae, through all the neighborhoods. That's what I heard. And the people are so passionate here because this is a great community. We do have diversity, equity, and inclusion. We want to keep it that way. But we have to ensure that everybody's voice is being heard and that their voices represent the strategic plan that we have. That's what I'm here for. Like I said, my no will be my no because there's some things that convict me on the spiritual level that I just will not go against. And if it's the only no that represents for the community, so be it. That's what I represent. So I still have to be me. So if you're looking for somebody that is honest, and that's in it, for the community and for their voices, then that's me. And if that's not what you're looking for, and you're looking for a politician, then don't vote for me, because that's not me.
Well, another situation that's hard to follow up. Absolutely, absolutely. Well, I'm coming from the corporate world, and I'm just going to say this. Every year, every employee has an opportunity to fill out an engagement survey, which allows them the chance to judge their leadership in the direction of the company. And so election day is your opportunity to fill out your engagement survey. So I ask that you all are engaging, you're here. So I ask that you go out and you talk to your friends, your neighbors, tell them this is their opportunity to fill out their engagement survey for the business of Flossmoor and to participate. I was privy to the past of Flossmoor. I am enjoying the present state of Flossmoor, and I hope to be a helping hand and an instrument of progress for the future of Flossmoor by sharing your voice and participating for you, the public. And thank you again for the opportunity to sit before you.